Hi everyone, I'm Susan Birch and welcome to another A Health Detective podcast. And today I'm going to introduce you to my very good friend, Anna Maydonova, who is the world's best trauma recovery coach. Anna, thanks for coming all the way from Mexico to talk to us today.
Hola, Susan. ¿Cómo estás? It's really, really amazing being on your podcast. Thank you so much.
Would you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into being a trauma recovery coach?
Yes, absolutely. Well, becoming a world's best trauma recovery coach has a very interesting story and not an easy one. And I'm saying that because this is the story that we are not allowed to tell, that many people can't hear or can't take. So I will try to tell it on the way that is not too heavy. And I'm always trying to do so. World's best trauma recovery coach was born when I went to my hometown, Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk, which is in Sakhalin Island, just north of Japan, to testify against my stepfather for the childhood sexual abuse. And while I was there, I found out that we have no childhood sexual abuse support, childhood sexual abuse survivor support at all. The closest helpline was in Moscow. And I thought, what can I do for those kids, for those women? And I've contacted the biggest magazine in my hometown, and I've asked them, would you be interested to publish my story? And one journalist said yes. And I told him about my childhood, about the time when my stepfather came into our life, about all our struggle through the whole my life. And you know what, Susan? This article went viral. I've left my email address saying, girls, if you have no one to talk to or nowhere to go to, send me an email. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails from women saying thank you so much for opening up, for bringing this topic. And one particular email struck me the most. It was a woman in her 40s. She was sexually abused by her father, and she got pregnant when she was 16. But she was so ashamed and so scared that anyone will find out who is the father of this child. And she left the house. She was sleeping on the sofas, on the couches of her friends, sometimes in the shelters. And when she gave a birth, she wouldn't have money, 16 years old girl. She had a time when she had to sleep under the bridge with a newborn. And still, she hasn't told anyone. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, how many women out there are still afraid to tell what was happening to them. And I've realized that's what I want to do. I want to become a voice for those women. I want to become this power that will help them to open up, to go through the healing process and to come on another side of their life, being more happier. And I started my podcast, World's Best Trauma Recovery Podcast. And so I've called myself World's Best Trauma Recovery Coach. And it's not an ego. It's not an ego thing. This is my commitment to myself. Every morning I would wake up and ask myself, how would the world's best trauma recovery coach conduct yourself? And my story started when I was 4 years old, when my biological father has left and never returned. And my mom became a 24 years old, a single mother of two during the Russian economic depression. It was a very, very difficult time, and we were struggling. Sometimes we wouldn't have food. My mom wouldn't get a salary. And I remember I've decided that I have to be strong for her. When I was 6, I would take my younger brother to the kindergarten and go to another kindergarten. I had to wait. I have to grow up very fast. And for 6 years, I remember we were struggling. When my stepfather came, I was 10 years old. And we were so excited, like, yes, finally, a man came into our life, our supporter, our protector. But it took a couple of months for him to reveal his true face. I remember I realized that he is not the person to protect us. When my 6 years old brother did something stupid in my stepfather's understanding, and my stepfather, being an army guy, a very, very disciplinarian guy, very strict, he grabbed his leather belt, he grabbed my brother, he dragged him to another bedroom, and he locked the door after himself. And I just remember my little brother was yelling and screaming and begging for help. Mommy, please help. And I tried to break the door. And my mom got so scared. And she just grabbed me so strong. She covered my ears. And we were just fighting until my stepfather was done. At those time, I got so scared. And I just told myself, just do whatever you want, just don't be in those bedrooms. It took my brother to recover a few days. But after that, we were beaten for everything, for not cleaning perfectly enough, for the conversations after 10 p.m. It was like an army. And I remember coming from school and trying to clean the whole house so perfectly that when my stepfather would come, he wouldn't be upset with me. And every day, every night, I knew he would come from work. My level of anxiety would rise higher and higher and higher and higher. And I would just make sure that everything is so perfect. Because even if one hair would be on the floor, we would be punished. I would be grabbed like a puppy and smashed my face against this floor. So we just learned how to survive. We were so disciplinarian. And I think I became such a perfectionist. So fast forward, understanding that we will do everything what our stepfather will tell us. Sexual abuse started. I just turned 15. And I remember him telling, if you tell your mother, I'm going to destroy her life and destroy your brother. And knowing, Susan, what he is capable of, I believed him. And he inserted a fear in me that if my mom will ever find out, she will hate me. For me, it was like a death. And I lived with that. I just got used to. The sexual abuse resulted in 2 pregnancies, one at 15 and another at 16. And I was forced to do the abortions. And one abortion damaged my reproductive system. And since then, I had 15 consecutive miscarriages, including 2 ectopic pregnancies. And one ectopic pregnancy nearly claimed my life. And I remember during the lockdown, 2020, 2021, I've been dealing with baby loss. I was mentally struggling at my workplace because what trauma does to us, it disconnects us from our soul. And going through this story, I was mentally dying, literally. I was such a perfectionist. I couldn't say no to people at work. I was taking too much things on my plate and trying to finish them all. I couldn't ask for help. I remember it was so energy draining. And during the lockdown, I've broken. I couldn't. And I told my partner what was happening. And he's like, I see now. Now the Pandora box was open for him. He realized why I'm behaving on one way or another. I was deeply insecure, Susan, deeply. And if I would see that my husband now is making a mess in the kitchen, I wanted to kill him. The same thing that my stepfather was doing to us. And just everything together. And I told my partner what was happening. And that's how my healing journey started. He said, Anna, maybe that's why we're losing our babies. Because we know body keeps the score. And when I started my healing journey, I remember all these memories started to come up. And I found myself standing on the balcony on the 38th floor, thinking, just jump, Anna. I was so desperate for peace. I was looking for this peace. But something strong, something, I don't know how to explain, something whispered in my head. Why you have to struggle? Why you are the one who has to go through this pain? And I remember stopping myself and thinking, really, why me? It's not my fault. Why me? And since then, I really started a healing journey, a very intense. I've tried everything. Psychologists, psychiatrists, psyche specialists, NLP, shamans, hypnotherapists, everything helped me. And in September last year, I finally had the courage to tell my mom what was happening. You're probably thinking, was she still with him? Not. When I left the house at 21, my father threw my mom on the street, telling me, this is your fault. If you're leaving the house, I don't need your mother. And I remember he was saying to me, no one gonna love you like I did. Like, you're never gonna find anyone who will care about you like I did. Can you believe it?
But
and when I told my mom,
did the abuse continue until you left? Did it continue?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been for 6 years.
Yeah.
I've tried to leave a few times, but he was so manipulative through my mom.
And did he beat your mum and hurt your mum?
Yes. Yes.
And so she was terrified as well.
She was terrified. I remember one day she had to hide in the closet because she was so afraid to get out.
Mm.
But she what was happening when I would push back or when I would fight back, I could see he would unleash his rage on my mom and my brother. But when I was obeying his rules, when I was a good girl, when I was doing everything he wanted, it was a good time for my mom and for my brother. So I was protecting my family.
And your mum had no idea what was going on sexually?
You know, I'm happy you asked this question, Susan, because when I told her, finally, she took it so beautifully. By the way, she said, "Why didn't you tell me before?" I said, "Mom, I thought you're gonna hate me." She said, "Anna, even if the whole world will be against you, I will always stay by your side." And an interesting moment that struck me the most was, she said, "I'm so sorry. I knew it. I just couldn't bear a thought that he's doing this to you." But what's happened, Susan? She became a mama bear. I've got my mom back. She became so protective over me. And in September last year, she pressed criminal charges against him. He still lives back in my hometown. And that's why I had to go to Russia to testify against him. And bear in mind, it was during the international ban in Australia, international travel ban in Australia. Like no one can get out from the country. And I remember I've applied for the permission, explaining everything, what was the reason. And they told me, no, this is not a good reason to testify against the perpetrator. Imagine how angry I was. And then I applied second time, but I've asked Russian police to send me a letter. I've I've asked for help, lawyers, and friends of mine. I went to Facebook group, just please help me, because if I wouldn't be in Russia, the case would be closed. The case didn't proceed because it was, firstly, they didn't have enough evidence because it's been 20 years. And secondly, it was a statute of limitation. And I just want to say, if anyone is listening to this podcast, please learn on my mistake. Don't wait, because your perpetrator can do the same thing to someone else. And that's what happened to me. When I opened up, a friend of mine told me that my stepfather was trying to do something similar to her. Yes, that's how I became a world's best trauma recovery coach. I realized this is my passion. I am helping women to overcome their shame and guilt and fear of judgment and pain, to live the life of their dreams, because it's holding us back. It doesn't allow us to go and enjoy the life and have a fulfillment and feel the joy, feel the happiness.
It really does affect you for your whole life. And why is it that we are so scared and intimidated to talk about these things that happen to us?
It's a shame. It's a shame response. And I believe there are a few moments. Firstly, our society is not very supportive towards childhood sexual abuse survivors. People don't know how to react. People don't know how to help. I bet you so many people would go and ask for help and they would be turned off. Someone wouldn't believe them, or someone would shame them even more and re-traumatize them. Another thing is we usually conditioned, because 99% of sexual abuse is happening in the family, and our perpetrators know us, and we know them. So it is shameful to tell, hey, I'm actually fucked up. My family is fucked up. My father is fucked up. My uncle is fucked up, or grandfather. It's very shameful. And the perpetrators already condition you, and they know you're not gonna tell. And they know the strength, and weaknesses, your weaknesses that they can pull. Another thing, the more you keep secret, the more you keep silent, the bigger shame is growing, the bigger fear is growing inside you. It's expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding, and it becomes so big that you're not just gonna not to tell anyone, you just can't think of it because it's so painful to look back.
I have come across so many women with similar experiences, and it's heartbreaking when you hear stories of the people who are supposed to love them and look after them, and who they should be able to trust, just taking such advantage of them, and the way it really, they end up, it's almost like they're in two parts. There's the person they show out to the world, and then there's this other person inside, and the conflicts just create ongoing problems in so many different areas of life, ongoing problems with other relationships and friendships, and behaviors that you struggle to explain why you do things.
This is so common, and people think that's a normal way to live, by the way. This is how I do, this is how I live, this is how I do things.
How I feel. I think, my story is different than yours. I wasn't sexually abused, by my father at all. But I was raped when I was 18, and I've only really just started talking about that in the last few years because of the shame and the guilt, and knowing the power that's had over me for such a long time. And so many of the decisions I've made have been based on reacting, without even really knowing that was what I was reacting to. And you just get, like you say, just get used to living with it. And your thoughts about yourself are cruel. You think that other people can be cruel to you. You can be so much more cruel to yourself than anybody else could possibly be.
The biggest enemy is inside. How did you feel when you first time opened up?
The first time I really opened up publicly about it was when I spoke at an Inspiring Women's conference just after after our first lockdown here in New Zealand. And I was trying to think about what I could talk about, and I thought, I know we all do this when we meet people. We have this assumptions that we have about them and who they are and the kind of lives they've lived, and that we use those assumptions to base our judgment of them and our connection with them. And I thought, I so passionately believe in that taking care of our health is one of our ways out of the quagmire that we get into. And that is what saved me, learning about exercise and nutrition and applying those things is the thing that enabled me to escape my past and escape my thoughts. Although they were still there, you know, they still sit there under the surface. But I thought, it's when I talk to other women about those things, they just think, oh, it's easy for you. For some reason, they think it's easy for you. Partly because they know their own stories, but I might not know their story, or other people don't know their story. And because they don't know my story, and so they can't connect with the struggle and the pain and how hard it is to step out of that and have to take small steps, small actions to rebuild and create a new life. So I decided at this conference that I would share that story. And people ask me how I felt afterwards, and I don't know, I didn't really feel anything very much at that time. And then I've spoken a little bit about it elsewhere. And then I wrote a chapter for a book, which is being published shortly, about transformational stories of women. So there's a group of women who have all written a different chapter about some aspect of their life. And I felt really good and okay about that until a few weeks ago when they said the book is going to be published. And then all of a sudden the fear, I just have this like gut-wrenching fear, and my stomach is in knots and my heart is pounding. I'm like, oh my God, everybody is going to read
and find out.
Yeah, and it's not even like it's not even like the story's really bad or anything, you know. And it's like, what? You know, why are we so ashamed of our past? What are we so scared of? Yeah, it's really interesting.
Well, Susan, this is very inspirational. What I didn't tell you is that when my article went published, my heart was just about to jump out, honestly, because we have a small town, and I was realizing everyone is going to find out. All my relatives, all my friends, all my schoolmates, university mates, my former colleagues. You know how scary it was. But you know what I thought? Hey, hold on. Firstly, it's not about me. If this will help at least one girl to heal, it's worth it. Sorry. And then I just realized, I just thought, if this will help at least one girl, it's worth it. And you know how many comments I had at the like first few days? 25,000. I know, right? 25,000 different comments. I had like some horrendous comments, but 95% of them were people who were thanking me for bringing this topic up, for being so courageous to speak up, for allowing people to open up. I know that a few women contacted the same journalist to publish their story. This is something, Susan. It's not about us anymore. It's about helping others to heal, encourage and empower others to step on this journey of healing, hope and happiness.
Well, you know, you said something earlier that was really interesting, which was that none of it was your fault. And yet we take on and accept the blame for it.
It's very, very often, I would say 99% of situations where a child is sexually abused is when he was grown up in a less than nurturing environment with no excuse me, with no boundaries, with no self-love. Usually self-worth is going down, is very low. And then those children are really think that this is my fault. This is my fault. And perpetrators, they're just confirming it. And I remember seeing some comments. I made this mistake, by the way, reading some comments. Don't. I remember people were blaming me. It's your fault. You provocated it.
Yeah.
I want to say, it's never your fault. I want to repeat it. It is never your fault. Every responsible man and woman seeing if their daughter or son will jump naked in their hands and try to seduce them, every responsible adult will push away, will say, hey, put your clothes on and let's talk. This is not appropriate. So you are just a child. You are just a teenager. We don't have this ability to think critically. Believe me, we're still kids. Yes, it's an adult's responsibility. Do not let this happen. And Susan, what's happened to you? No one has a right to touch your body. Conscious you or subconscious, it doesn't matter. No one has the right. That's not our fault.
Let's talk a little bit about the aftermath of it. Let's talk a little bit about the self-criticism and the negative self-talk. And, you know, we all have different ways of reacting to these things. And you talk about perfectionism, and I'm probably a bit of a perfectionist as well. But lots of women find that they become overweight as a way of protecting themselves, and they find self-love in foods that are not really helping to enhance their health and their mindset and make them feel good about themselves. And then we just add to the self-criticism. You know, I was bulimic for a lot of years because I didn't go the way of overindulging in food. I probably went the other way where, you know, it was something I could control, was my exercise and my food. And so it was one thing in my life that I had control over. Yeah.
That's interesting what you're saying. And this is so true. Women put on a lot of weight as a self-protection mechanism, and food becomes as a comforting thing in our life. Happened to me as well, especially after I left my house, trying to protect myself from other men. I saw the potential perpetrator in every single person, especially in authority people. What was happened to me, apart of putting a lot of weight, I was about 60 kilos, 65 kilos, which is, I believe 130, 140 pounds. It's a lot for my, I'm short, I'm like 162. Apart of putting the weight on, I became a people pleaser. Big time a people pleaser. I wouldn't know how to set my own boundaries. I wouldn't put my own needs in front of others. I would always try to, to help people, even if it's destroying my life, destroying my health. And to find a job, to get a job for me was like a torture. To answering the questions, I was trying literally to answer the question in a way that I thought my interviewer would love to hear it. It was tiring. And as I mentioned, I couldn't say no to people. So people would take an advantage of me and give me more work, or my friends would take an advantage of me and asking me for more and more favors without helping me or returning them back. And I was so afraid to ask for help. I would do everything myself. Even if I need to figure out how to, fly the plane, I would try to do it myself. I would spend so much time on things that I don't have to do, honestly, in my own. And what helped me really, and I just figured this out 2 years ago when I met my ideal partner, Laban. He showed me the way of staying healthy mentally and physically through this carnivore diet. And what I realized, you can't feel good and you can't do things without being healthy, honestly. So in my practice, in my holistic method of healing, I'm looking at all the aspects. It's mental health, it's physical health, and it's spiritual health. You can't just think, I need to,
You can't separate those
you
out.
can't. You cannot.
No.
Your mental health depends on your diet, on your gut health, and your gut health depends on your mental health.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you were talking about negative self-talk. Oh, this is a big time. 85% of inner talks are negative, usually. So I had to learn how to stand up to myself, in myself. Really, I had to learn how to swipe all these negative talks. I'll give you an example. I was coming to your podcast and I started to think, no, it's such a good podcast. What you can say, what you can give, like, who are you? How dare you are to go on Susan podcast? What are you gonna say? I don't know what to say. I have no value to add. I literally had to fight myself, Susan. I was so close to cancel the podcast. Can you believe it? But then I thought, what if at least one woman will benefit from it? What if at least I would save at least, or transform at least one life? Because someone needs to hear it.
So how do you notice your negative self-talk, Anna? Did you have to learn to notice that? Did you have to become aware of that? Because that's something that took me a long time to notice that I was doing. And then when I did notice it, then I could go, oh, whoa, stop. Where does that come from? Is that even true? And a question I started asking myself was like, actually, who else actually cares about this? Like, I'm the only one that's like stressed out and caring about this. Nobody else cares. Everyone else is too busy being involved in their own lives. So asking those questions.
You know, what I've learned. Firstly, what people think of me is none of my business. Honestly, after I've published my article with all these 25,000 of comments and 5,000 of negative comments, so what? I can't change people's mind. I can't make them like me. Neither I'm a dollar to like me, you know. And when I was saying to me, like, how dare you are to become a coach, to become a speaker? You have no education. You have no experience. How dare you become a hypnotherapist? Like, who are you? People not gonna come to you, you know. And then I was like, hold on. Hold on. Who is it talking to me? Is it my 5-year-old child who is trying to protect me? Or 10-year-old child who got so scared of the judgment of my stepfather that she's trying to prevent us from doing all these amazing things, just not to be heard, just not to be judged. For me, was biggest turning point is when I was doing a child within healing. I've noticed that's where my negative self-talk and judgment is coming from. That was to protect me from new things, to protect me from making myself vulnerable in front of all those people. And it really helped me. When I went back and when I really looked at my 10 years old Anna's eyes, and I comforted her and I hugged her and I told her how much I love her and that everything will be okay, because it's my responsibility to protect her now. The things started to change. I've asked her for help. Help me. And you know what's happening now? Even if when I have a negative self-talk, I was like, have fun. Have fun with that. The life is a game. Play. You create your own rules. And here we go. Now I'm on your podcast.
And you've got your own amazing podcast as well. So we'll make sure we share that with everybody, because they might like to listen to other people's journeys and hear other people's stories, because it certainly gives inspiration to working on your own life. And, you know, we've only got one life. It's not a practice run. We don't get back to come back and do it all over again. And so wherever we're at in this moment, it can only get better in the future if we just keep trusting and keep working on it and keep believing that, you know, that it is well worth the effort.
Exactly. Ask yourself from on the scale from 1 to 10, how satisfied are you of your life? How satisfied are you of your relationship? How satisfied are you of your career? So many people are going to work that they don't love, they hate. They spend 8 hours in the place they don't enjoy. Ask yourself, how is my relationship? Is it nurturing or is it draining? Is it supporting or is it toxic? Why am I in this relationship? What is holding me back? And then it's the same with your life. So many people die at 25 and don't get birth until 65. They just waiting until this end date. They don't live. So what is holding? Decide, how long do I want to live for? I was going to live until 450. Honestly, the hardest thing is to believe that you can. Believe.
So how do you help people overcome the sense of overwhelm? That's one of the biggest problems that my clients face. They have this, they know they want something better for themselves. They know they want to feel better. Low energy is one of the biggest complaints that people have, is I don't have enough energy. And yet when it comes to making changes, there's something really fearful about doing something new. We have all these beliefs about food. There's something about the need to keep doing what we've been doing because it's safe and secure and comfortable. And they just say, I just feel too overwhelmed. I've got all this other stuff happening. And so, how do I take care of me at the same time that I've got to deal with all this other stuff, all this external stuff?
I love this question. Before I answer this, Sue, I also have lots of clients who have low energy. You know why? Because we spend so much energy and nerves and time on worrying about things that don't usually exist. And it's draining us. You can't make anyone to change unless they come to this point. Otherwise, it's going to drain your energy trying to help someone who is not asking for help. And some of the key things, what I'm doing for taking care of myself is firstly my diet. I start from the beginning. It's about loving yourself. Because when you love yourself, you will never let anyone to talk to you on a bad way. You will never allow yourself to put some shit stuff in your body. You stop attracting assholes because you're gonna be so happy. Literally, after all my toxic relationships, when I was getting into because of my low vibes and low self-esteem and no boundaries at all, I now stopped attracting assholes, negative people, because I'm too annoying for them. They don't like me. They're like, just no, I don't want to be in this vibe. She's not complaining about the life, or also because when you love yourself, like everything started changing around you.
Can we delve into that a little bit? Because there's a lot of talk about loving yourself out there, and there's a lot of strategies. And although we know it's true in essence, on the outside, well, it can be quite challenging to do, and some of the some of the methodology around it, which is, look in the mirror and tell yourself you're beautiful, or, those kinds of things, I don't think actually work, because there's a part of our head that goes, no, you're not, So it's about accepting yourself for all the good shit and all the bad stuff as well, and being, upfront about both, and maybe believing that you deserve to treat yourself well. It's
You can tell you so.
Body you've got, you deserve to be good to yourself. I don't know. I don't know how we upgrade this love for ourselves,
Honestly, through my whole journey, I've tried so many methods, and looking in the mirror and loving my body, and trying to tell myself how good I am, that I'm worth it. I was writing a letter to myself in the future, in the past. I've tried so many things, but what really made me love myself is when I went through hypnotherapy, and when I faced all my deepest, darkest, all of them. When I faced all of the things that I was so ashamed of, that I was so afraid of, that were holding me back. Even if I would stand in front of the mirror and tell myself, no, you are beautiful, you are worth it, you are smart and kind and loving and all this stuff, I just didn't believe it. I did not believe in it. And only when I was doing this deep, deep healing, it came from inside, not from outside. It came from inside. And that's what I'm helping to my clients. And you know this, Susan. It's only when you clean inside, then this comes.
Well, I think being able to accept that we all do and think and behave in ways that we're not necessarily proud of, and we don't really always want to share with the world, I think is important to accept, but important to know that everybody has that side to them. We all have that dark side, and we all have that. And I liked what you said before about having some fun with it, because that's what I do now. I go, oh, look, there I go again. I'm thinking those kinds of thoughts again, and laugh at myself about it. And
you know what I've noticed? When I released my trauma, Susan, you won't believe, I became look younger, and I became feel younger. I felt like a 15 years old girl. I became bubbly again. I became so playful. I think the weight of the world just came off my shoulders. I felt so much freedom. That's the beauty of releasing it.
And so here's another question. Do you ever feel guilt for life being so much better now? Do you ever feel, oh, I feel so good today, and then have these thoughts of, oh, I'm not someone who should feel good. I don't really deserve to feel good. I've done all these things in my life that weren't that great. Who am I to feel good?
That's such a good question. I have felt this way. I felt like a monster, especially feeling guilty for breaking my mother's happiness, seeing her struggle. And I remember I was saying to myself, I can't be happy if my mom is not happy. But you know what? It's so selfish, honestly, because Susan, just think about it. Can you think of someone, monsieur, or I don't know, in the person in the shop, or your neighbor who is constantly complaining, who is so heavy in depression and negative? Do you want to go back to this monsieur? Do you want to go back to this beautiful shop with beautiful dresses, but knowing that this person is over there? No, no one wants to be around those people, because happiness is very infectious.
Yeah.
Yes. It creates ripple effect. So if you want people being happy around you, that's where you fill up yourself with happiness, because what's inside of us is outside. I did, but now I'm realizing that I can't do this to my family, to my friends, to my amazing husband.
Congratulations, by the way. You've been married for just over
1 week.
Oh.
Thank you. He was a man I've created, literally. I remember I was in a very toxic relationship in my first marriage. And I went to New Zealand, to Queenstown, for my 30th birthday. And I fall in love with this country and with its people. And coming home, another fight with my ex-husband. And I remember my mom called me. She said, Anna, you need to write an explicit list of your ideal partner. What do you want? Because I was so depressed. I was so honestly suicidal. I couldn't do this anymore. And I was so in denial. I was like, no, he doesn't exist. That's all bullshit. She said, just to try. And I remember I literally described my ideal person like he was standing in front of me. And I put, he's bald. He's a New Zealander. I swear, God. He's athletic. He loves running. He loves exercising. He's non-drinker, non-smoker. He doesn't do drugs. He's free of drugs. He's very honest and he's very loyal. And I truly believe this man does exist. Susan, a week and a half later, this bald New Zealander stopped me on the street of Melbourne. And we've been living happily after for nearly 4 years.
Well, he'd written his list and he saw you and he's like, there she is. She's walking down the street towards me.
Yeah, it was amazing. When we moved in, I found his list of his ideal partner. Yeah. It was amazing. And I've just realized we don't need to find our ideal partner. We just need to create. We don't need to try to make our ideal life. We can create it because we are creators.
And I think when we are living with integrity in ourselves, then it's so much more. Well, the world opens up. We see the opportunity. We recognize what we're looking for when we see it, instead of having this big barrier up where we can't see through it because we're so so deep and dark inside of our own misery, really.
100% agree.
This has been an amazing conversation, Anna. I'd love to pick it up again sometime, actually, and can continue from here, because I've still got a few more questions I'd like to throw your way, and other ways that we can talk through and perhaps give women some of the thought processes or stimulate them into just taking those tiny steps to take better care of themselves. And that when you and I are talking about self-care, we're not talking about self-indulgence, which sometimes is what it gets confused with. We're not talking about having our nails done or having a facial. That's all part of it, but that's the self-indulgent part of self-care. We're talking about the real nitty-gritty of doing that bit of work and taking those small, consistent steps.
It's when the pain of coming out of your shell is worse than staying in your shell. That's when you start realizing, hey, there is much more. There is unlimited potential in your life. And it's amazing what miracles start happening.
Just before we do wind up, what are your thoughts about when we are taking responsibility for other people's outcomes in their lives? And, you know, again, I'm thinking back to a lot of my clients who feel so overwhelmed about the responsibility that they have for their children or their husbands or their work colleagues, that they just can't see a way to looking after themselves. What are your thoughts about, just final thoughts on how you can step into taking care of yourself without feeling guilty and feeling that you're being a bad mum or you're being a bad wife or partner?
Well, it comes back to the point, you can't feed from empty cup. You just cannot. Don't educate your kids, educate yourself. And it also comes to the point, stop trying to worry about your kids or your husband or your parents' life. Because when you radiate these positive vibes, this happiness, everyone starts to changing around you. Start with yourself. What's happening, what I've learned with my mother, when she was worrying about me, I want listeners to understand, worrying. What if she not gonna get into university? What if she not gonna get a good husband? What if she gonna break her leg? What if she going to crash her car and die? Guess what? Guess what's happening? All these signals, and you can see that your child didn't get into university, that your child got into drugs, because there is worrying. When you care about yourself, when you put your needs first, you start radiating. Everything is fine. Everything is beautiful. Everything as it is. Just you start trusting yourself. You start surrounding yourself. And suddenly your husband stopped drinking. Suddenly your kids start loving you, because it's so pleasure to be around you. You're not this annoying mother anymore. You are an example of being confident and loving and positive person. who knows how to set the boundaries.
Mm.
And if your husband is still on drugs or alcohol or wife, guess what? Maybe that's not the life that you want to live. And even if it's your own kids, no one has a right. No one has a right to offend you. I hope this answered your question.
Excellent. And it's a great way to finish up. And maybe we can pick this conversation up again another day. Can you tell everyone where they can find you, where they can find the world's best trauma recovery coach? We'll make sure. I'll put it in the show notes.
Sure, you can go on my website. It's www.AnnaMaydonova. It's ANNAMAYDONOVA.com. It actually sounds like a 6 dot balls in cricket. So it's my nickname, Anna Maydonova. Cricketers will love it. You can find me on Instagram. It's Anna Maydonova. On Facebook, Anna.Maydonova. LinkedIn, and on all podcast platforms. World's best trauma recovery podcast.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Susan. You know what? It was so scary for me. Not scary, but it was so nervous for me to come. But you've made me feel so welcomed and so relaxed. And I love you and I appreciate you for it.
Right back at you there, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks.